Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this month's Future Tuesdays. Good to see you all. Hope everyone is keeping well. I'm absolutely delighted to say that this month we're joined by Dafydd Hall Williams and the Ulster Touring Orchestra. And apparently we will at some point also be joined by Ross Ramgobin by video, I'm told, since he is at present rehearsing in the Opera House. He'll have to get his priorities right, I would imagine, in future. But I'm absolutely delighted to have Dafydd with us because Dafydd has been a supporter from the very early days of Future Screens. And I think the most interesting thing, without stealing any of his thunder, about the work that Dafydd and the opera have been doing is illustrating that technology does not replace but enhances the practices which are already there, and allows for those practices to be reimagined in ways which might even create greater access for an audience to a genre which is very important to the arts, and which, if we're being honest, a good many of us don't really know enough about to feel confident in. And I think the work that Dafydd has been doing has really shown ways in which that can become more accessible. So I'm really excited to hearing about it. As always, if you have any comments or questions, if you want to stick them in the chat bar, I'll try and field those afterwards with Dafydd. But at this point, it's over to you, Dafydd, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Paul. I will just take a moment to share the screen and start the presentation. Thank you very much again for the introduction, Paul, and for this opportunity to take part in a Future Tuesday. I've been following these sessions during the lockdown, and they've been a highlight of the week while working from home. And so it's great to be able to take part in one. Thank you for taking the time to find out more about Ulster Touring Opera and our work. My colleague Ross Ramgobin is currently in rehearsals at the Royal Opera House. However, it's quite fitting that he'll be able to join us digitally via a video that he's recorded specifically for this session. Today's session will focus on the augmented reality projects that we're developing, going into detail about what the projects are, how they're being created, and going into detail about our vision for the future. But I'd like to start the session by discussing why an opera company is working in augmented reality. It's vital that we grow our audiences for opera, and that we make sure the future of this audience is as diverse and inclusive as possible. This is a picture of the UTO Explore Opera workshop that took place last Saturday in the Struhl Arts Centre in Omagh, with a group of young people between the ages of 8 and 12. This is what educational opera looks like prior to the pandemic, and thankfully UTO has been able to return to these in-person workshops. However, since 2020, opera companies have had to radically rethink their approach to engaging with audiences of the future. Many opera companies have produced films or released recordings of their work. Ulster Touring Opera, however, have taken a very different approach. During Deepa Manclair's webinar at Brestival 2021, she described augmented reality as an area of massive growth in the future due to the democratization of compatible mobile devices. Here's an image of the game that's defined the AR breakthrough to the mainstream, Pokemon Go. This was my first experience of augmented reality back in 2017, and I've always wondered whether there's the potential to use this technology for opera. As an interesting side note, the company which makes Pokemon Go, Niantic, have recently opened up their development tools through the Lightship program. I founded UTO in 2019 with the aim of creating a company that worked to increase access to opera across the province of Ulster. A motivation for this was the range of excellent medium-scale venues across the 9 counties of Ulster, which could form a network of venues for touring productions. When I approached the venues, they were all keen on the idea, and so I began setting up the cross-border company. However, as I was interested in reaching beyond the venues, and Deepa very clearly articulates the benefits of working in augmented reality. AR gives us the ability to not only reach younger audiences who may not be interested in coming into the theatres yet, but also we're very aware of the accessibility benefits of this kind of work for anyone who's not able to attend one of our performances. As well as the potential demographic reach of the technology, I'm also interested in the implications of bringing opera into AR. On the one hand, this is a fun exploration of what's possible through immersive technology. It also raises important questions about viewership explored in Walter Benjamin's essay, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. Benjamin states that the artistic performance of the stage actor is definitely presented to the public via the actor in person. That of a screen actor, however, is presented by a camera. The camera that presents the performance of the film actor to the public need not respect the performance as an integral whole. The audience's identification with the actor is really an identification with the camera. Consequently, the audience takes on the position of the camera, and Benjamin suggests that this approach does not expose authentic artistic values. However, through immersive technology such as augmented reality, we want to explore whether it's possible to present a digitally reproduced performance while still presenting the performance as an integral whole. This is why, when the Arts Council of Northern Ireland Seed Fund was launched in January 2020, we worked with our partners Centurial and Volograms to devise the AR Don Giovanni project. Funding was supported by Future Screens NI and Digital Catapult NI, as well as the Arts Council, and was designed to encourage cross-sectoral collaboration to drive innovation in technologies and create new content, products, services, and experiences. Our project was inspired by a project undertaken by Google and Queensland Opera in 2019, where they explored sections of the Magic Flute in AR. Our project is designed to create an augmented reality opera experience based on the final moments of Don Giovanni's life. The scene will be brought to life in a person's living room, with their home becoming the set of the opera. Baritone Ross Ramgobin was cast in the role of Don Giovanni, and Northern Irish bass Alan Ewing was the commendatore. We wanted the project to be a 5-minute experience, and the scene in the opera is around 7 minutes long. And it also includes a third character, Don Giovanni's servant, Leporello. We commissioned a new piano reduction of the scene, cut it down to 5 minutes, and also cut poor Leporello out of the scene. On the 22nd of September 2020, following all the government guidelines, we held the audio recording of the scene in St. Paul's Church in Knightsbridge. We recorded the audio in multi-track in case we're able to bring in spatial audio elements as the project develops. And we're also able to work on the blocking for the scene and film this for reference as we prepared for the volumetric recording. We then had to put the project on hold due to the lockdown in early 2021. And thanks to the Future Screen NI Proof of Concept grant, we were able to pick this up again in October 2021. The next phase of the project took place in Dublin, where we undertook the volumetric recordings of the performers on the 2nd of December 2021 at Vologram's studio. Because the green screen studio is only large enough to hold one person at a time, the performers had to record their blocking individually. The nature of their movements had to be more specific, as fast movements are not captured well on numerous cameras. We used Laban techniques in order to steer clear of efforts like flicking and punching, and focus on efforts like pressing, ringing, and gliding in order to make sure that the motions were both natural and recordable. Post-production will take place in Belfast, where Centurial and UTO's application developer, Robbie McKinney, will bring together the visual and the audio elements in order to create the experience. This is done via Vologram's Unity plugin, as well as Unity features such as plane detection to locate the assets in real space. I mentioned Robbie, as this leads into our second AR project, Ill-Fitting Clothes, and the XRX program. However, before I discuss that project, I'd like to share the video of baritone Ross Ramgobin has made for this project, where he discusses his experience of creating an AR Don Giovanni project, as well as the challenges of working in this medium.
Hello everyone, really glad to be joining you virtually today. My name's Ross Ramgobin and I'm a British baritone. I'm currently understudying in Handel's Theodora at the Royal Opera House, and next up for me is a trip to Tel Aviv to sing Figaro in the Israeli opera's Marriage of Figaro. So creating the augmented reality opera with Dafydd and UTO has been quite the journey, not least because of COVID getting in the way at every turn and forcing us to postpone several times. We recorded the audio in a church in Knightsbridge in London back in September 2020, and after several changes of plan on the whims of politicians in London, Belfast and Dublin, we finally managed to capture the video at Vologram's HQ in December 2021. As the recording process was split into audio and visual elements, it was much different to other film projects I'd worked on before. prior to this, I'd recorded audio on set, but that relies on everyone in the scene getting everything right all the time, which is pretty unrealistic. So for this audio recording, by doing it separately, I could focus solely on getting the best possible vocal quality. However, I had to think ahead as to how I might act in the scene in the future in order to get the correct intention in the voice. For the video capture, Daf and I travelled to Dublin to work with the fantastic team at Volograms. I spent the afternoon in a room kitted out as a green screen in 360 degrees, acting the scene and being recorded with a series of, I think, 16 odd 4K cameras. So I was filmed at every angle, ready to combine with the audio. Of course, that meant lip syncing live to the audio recording being played out in the room that we had created more than a year earlier. So Daf and I had a Zoom rehearsal a couple of days beforehand in order to just refresh and plan how the music and the movement would fit together. And we had to be really detailed with every movement to maximise the capabilities of the technology at Volograms. So working in this way wasn't without challenge, and that's without taking into account a global pandemic. Rehearsing via Zoom is never fun. I much prefer, personally, being in the room face to face in order to collaborate with people. Some of the biggest challenges on Zoom are around latency. In another project, even picking a tempi to work on a piece of music can take twice as long as it would in real life. So, as I mentioned previously, and a challenge which opera singers have had to get used to in the last 2 years is, and with the rise of films, is lip syncing. If I'm singing a high note or a particularly important note in the audio recording, naturally my breathing and posture might change. So I have to remember that and reflect that in the acting. Otherwise it can look really strange. If you're looking at someone on the camera and there's a very clear breath in that you can hear on the recording, but there's no movement visually, it can look quite strange. We had to be very aware of that, and it was also quite disconcerting at times, not all the time, but to be acting in a scene like this while alone in a room without any other characters to react to or bounce off. And finally, the exacting nature of preparing a scene to be captured in this way was challenging. Every element, from the exact shade of trousers I was wearing to the types of hand movements I made, had to be run past the Vologram team well in advance. As someone who's used to my scenes on stage evolving and developing and changing throughout the rehearsal process, this was quite a big learning curve for me. But once everything came together on the day, all that preparation made a lot of sense. And I'm really excited to see the results of this project. It's unlike anything else I've worked on before. So hats off to Daf for making it happen under such difficult circumstances. Opera, along with other art forms, has really had to adapt the last couple of years. And I love the idea that augmented reality can put opera literally into people's hands, especially those who may not have been able to go to the theatre because of shielding during the pandemic. And I'm a huge believer that in order to attract new audiences in the future, we need to take opera out of the traditional spaces where people might not feel comfortable in a very luxurious, ornate opera house. And what we're doing is we're giving people the chance to watch Mozart in their homes, and that seems like an amazing place to start.
While the journey of ill-fitting clothes is the journey of our partnership with Future Screens NI. It began with a commission from the Arts Council Northern Ireland. In 2021, UTO secured a Stability and Renewal grant from the Arts Council, and part of this grant included a commission from an award-winning composer, Brian Irvine, to create a new opera for young audiences specifically for AR. Brian's recent opera, Least Like the Other, was premiered in 2021 by Irish National Opera, so we're delighted to be working with a composer of his calibre. We had no funding to actually make the opera at that point, with the ambition that something would come along in the future that would make it possible. During a networking event at the Online Beyond Conference 2020, I was introduced to the DepthKit software pilot program. Members of the pilot program had access to software which would enable them to use off-the-shelf sensors to create volumetric assets. This would have the benefit for us for being able to experiment more with our work, as studio time has to be extremely focused because of the costs involved. At around this time, Future Screens NI opened their Future Creatives program, and this was the perfect opportunity for UTO to secure the 5 Azure Connect sensors that we needed, and also to cover the costs of the pilot program membership. I mentioned that we are a new company, and so we've had to build from some surprising places. And this includes turning a local bowling club here in Belfast into a DIY volumetric studio to test our equipment. In summer 2021, I began testing with a single camera, and then with the help of some very kind colleagues, I was able to increase the scope to 3 cameras. UTO hired soprano Mary McCabe and pianist Keith McAllister to perform Song to the Moon by Dvorak from the opera of Zalka. And I have to thank Gavin Kearney, Luke McNeese, Jake Young, and my mentor for the project, Dr. Hugh Chung's son, for giving up their time to help to make the pilot possible. Coming out of the project, I had an asset with which to test whether in-house AR opera was possible. At this point, Future Screens NI helped once again by securing a place for UTO as an in-person exhibitor at the Beyond Conference 2021. We worked alongside our partners Sentireal to exhibit at the showcase in the Titanic Centre in Belfast. And here are some more images of the showcase, including the asset as it's seen on the iPad. Both the commission from Brian and the learnings from the pilot project culminated in UTO's successful application to the XRX program. XRX is a new program delivered in partnership by NI Screen, Digital Catapult, and Future Screens NI, with the aim of supporting companies working on innovative ideas in the XR industry. The program supports 3 companies who have an ambition to make new, innovative, immersive content, products, and services. I applied to make Brian's opera a reality, and we were lucky enough to have been accepted. As well as providing a home for UTO at the Ormo Baths in Belfast, and enabling us to work with our application developer, Robbie McKinney, the XRX program has allowed us to create the opera for teenage audiences. The piece, now called Ill-Fitting Clothes, Papagina's Song, was recorded with words from Marta McIlduff and holds a witty mirror up to Mozart's mysterious and underexplored character, Papagena, from the Magic Flute. On the 10th of January, we recorded the audio for the opera in Windmill Lane Studio in Dublin. On the 2nd of February, we will film the volumetric content at Digital Catapult NI, where we bring together our equipment and their green screen setup to create our own volumetric studio in Belfast for the first time. Here are some shots of the testing phase and the setup we'll use to volumetrically capture soprano Amy Niari on the 2nd of February. The most important part of our future plans is our upcoming tour. I've not mentioned it at this point yet, as we've been focused on the digital, but you have the opportunity to come and see us in person in February 2022 as we tour our A Night at the Opera tour, including 7 venues across the province. And they include Newton Abbey, Enniskillen, Omer, Monaghan, Armagh, Letterkenny, and Cavan. As well as having a great night out, you'll be able to get your hands on our AR opera demo in the foyer and give us direct feedback on what you think of our immersive work and where you see the medium going in the future. We want to learn as much as possible about our work from this tour, and we're delighted to be working with Thrive. Thrive is an audience development agency for the arts that work in Northern Ireland, and we'll be putting together a survey that you'll find on your seats and after the AR demo. If you come across one of these surveys, please fill it in and hand it back, because we want to learn as much as we can at this very early point in our work as a company. We'll be launching our app later in the spring. We're working on getting the app onto test flight at the moment, and so sign up to our newsletter if you want more information and want to get involved with that beta testing. And we feel that creating volumetric AR work is a scalable solution, with applications across not only the opera sector, but also in dance and theatre. It's an inescapable fact that the landscape for AR-based storytelling is emerging and emerging quickly. We believe that these projects are taking place at the right time to further explore this landscape, discovering what it can reveal about opera as an art form, while forging new partnerships with like-minded individuals and companies in the performing arts sector and beyond. So thank you very much for taking your time to come here today and have a listen to our work at Ulster Touring Opera. I'm very happy to answer any questions you have. Please feel free to contact us on any of the details on the screen, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you at our spring performances in February. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dafydd. What a joy to hear a talk that mentions both Walter Benjamin and Brian Irvine in the same talk. How wonderful. Two geniuses in their own way. The questions haven't particularly started coming in yet. That's always the way. They're so busy listening to you that they don't get round to the questions, but they'll start coming in. But certainly there's a number of excellence and congratulations and well done's coming in there, which is quite right. So I'll try and get us started, and then hopefully we'll have some questions coming in. I suppose what I've been thinking about while you've been talking so enthusiastically about it is that, and I flippantly said at the start about opera being such an established performance art with such a massive history. Have you had any resistance from the sector?
None at all. I mean, I think it's just been interest in what we're attempting and our work. And there's been some really exciting conversations that we've had with other companies, both in opera and in other art sectors, about the potential of what we're doing. But I think that, you know, that I think goes back to prior to our work as Ulster Touring Opera. I think opera for a long time has been looking at ways to engage new audiences and the audiences of the future. So it has had an openness that our projects just kind of form a part of, in my opinion.
Yeah, without being anecdotal, I haven't been to opera very many times, but I was once taken to the English National Opera to hear a John Adams, the one in Oppenheimer. And the thing I remember most about it was that they had put vibrating speakers under the seats so that when the nuclear bomb went off, everybody literally shook in the seat. And I just thought about that kind of technology that wouldn't have been available when obviously the opera was being written or put together. Holly asks, she says it's amazing work, which it is. How many people in total would have been involved in the process?
So we had, for the Windmill Lane studio recording for Ill-Fitting Clothes, we had 15 musicians, instrumentalists, plus soprano Amy Nyari. And also in that we had the technicians at the Windmill Lane Studios and Brian Irvine at the recording as well, and conductor Sinead Hayes. So that was 20 people just involved in the audio recording. Video recording, we have costumes which are being created by Gillian Lennox, who is the head of wardrobe at the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. It's wonderful to be able to work with, again, somewhat a creative of that calibre. So we're also bringing in makeup artists to work with Amy just before the recording. And then on the Don Giovanni side of things, one one very interesting thing which happened, which I haven't mentioned, is that we actually had to use a different performer for the visual recording for the Commendatore than in the audio. So the audio, we had Alan Ewing, who is a Northern Irish bass from Omagh. Now, unfortunately, he wasn't available when we made the volumetric recording in Dublin. And so the actor Margot Regan had to actually step in, learn the part, but so that he could embody that in the volumetric recording. And so that was one of the challenges and one of the ways we kind of overcame that. And then we bring all of that together in Belfast in time for beta testing in March and February.
I mean, I'm trying to think through. I'll probably get a question at the end of it, but does all of that kind of actually create a barrier between you and the audience, or does it make a link between you and the audience? But we need to. I'll let you think about that for a while. We can go back to that. Absolutely delighted, and not saying this with any kind of self-praise for future screens. Delighted to hear you talking about the work that Hujong did with you, because that's exactly what we hope those mentors would do, and the support that they would give, and they have all been doing that within the space, and I would like to publicly thank Hujong for that. And on cue, she's come in with a question where she's asking, what do you think the ideal future of the Ulster Touring Orchestra would be, and what needs to be done for that to happen, do you think?
I believe that the way to generate excitement and an audience for the future is to regularly give them access to opera. And that can be done in a range of ways. And that's the seed of all of our work, our live work, our immersive work. The beginning for that is our Night of the Opera tour. So that tour of 7 venues across the province, 4 in Northern Ireland and 3 in the Republic of Ireland, will form the backbone for future full production tours. So ideally, our first one will be spring 2023, and then will be at least annually after that, so that people know regularly when they can go to their local theatres and see a production of opera, which sounds like something simple, but is actually something which is rather complicated to set up. But once you gain momentum and gain regularity, then you have that regular access to opera. In the same vein, creating more and more immersive content which can be housed on the app that Robbie is designing for us means that we can keep on reaching people who maybe don't want to come to the theatre yet for whatever reason, or can't come to the theatre for whatever reason. What the future is, we've got now, thanks to our colleagues at Digital Catapult NI, they've got a hold of a pair of Nreal glasses. So we're starting to take that little step from a heads down mobile interface to a heads up. And that's a really exciting pathway to explore, which is a few years away. But of course, the technological literacy that people are getting at the moment will last throughout their lives. So you've got to think ahead to where the technology might be in a few years and where you want your work to be in line with that.
I was really interested in what Ross said about the way he had to rethink his practice. Does that mean that opera is being changed, or is it just being delivered in a different way?
I think opera is always changing. And I think that's, any art form has to do that to stop itself becoming, falling into a stasis and becoming something which is more of a museum or exhibition piece rather than a piece of live living practice. I think that think about the invention of film. Opera predates that by hundreds of years, and yet it now feels quite comfortable in that medium. And what's really exciting about immersive technology, from what I can glean, just really starting to dip our toes into it, is that we're at that nascent point with AR, where we're just exploring what we can do with the medium. We're setting up cameras and having experiments. It's all fairly early stage, but it will continue to shift and change. And my ideal with all of that is that it supports the live, and then the live supports the digital. So that a really easy example is that on our app, you'll be able to see our upcoming performances. So you're able to go through and see if you've enjoyed that here, you can come and see it live. And so there has to be a partnership between those two. Hannah
Slatney has asked about the app how will you reach audiences with that? Will it be linked to your own activities, or will it have an availability in its own right, perhaps within an app store or whatever? And she's also indicating that she can't see where to sign up for the beta testing. So perhaps you can enlighten us on that.
Sure. Yeah. So on the first point, it'll be, again, we're working on all this, but the plan is that it will be available on Apple Store in March. So that's what we're working toward. What we've discovered in immersive technology, you have to sometimes be flexible with these, but that's what we're working towards, and that's a great platform for us to reach people. Then ideally we'd broaden that out and get onto the Android store as well, as compatibility kind of moves forward. And that's one of the challenges of working in this area at the moment, is software and hardware compatibility and the kind of catch up they're playing moments. Where to sign up for beta testing? If you sign up for our newsletter, then that's on our website, which is ulstertouringopera.com. Then we will release some information through that. I think we'll also put it out through social media as well. So please, again, those slides, and we can share the PowerPoint presentation as well, has all of those social media details. We will be promoting it as much as we can, because test flight seems like a very good way for us to get feedback before we then release the full app in March.
Great. Okay. I think Levi's put up a link there, and hopefully that will work for people as well. Robbie McKinney asking if you have any ideas around actually gamifying the AR experience, which would take it away from being purely visual and passive into interactivity.
Yeah, I think that one interesting, I suppose there's 2 points there. One is that the volumetric assets themselves as assets can sometimes be hard to manipulate. So it's not like a motion capture where you can move that and manipulate that through editing software. Really, that's very, very difficult with volumetric, which really is creating a film in 3D. But what you do around that is really exciting. And that's maybe this next step of where we might explore our work, is in terms of what we can do with those assets as effects, as interactivity. One potential step forward is, how do we possibly bring AR and our live work together? Now, whether that's done in a venue whereby we augment the auditorium in some way, or what's very interesting is that this depth kit software has the functionality, and we're still working on getting up to the point where we can use this functionality, but it has the functionality for live broadcast. So live volumetric broadcast onto tablets and the mediums. Now, that's very early stage, but that's really exciting, because then we can start to share and get that live performance out onto our app and onto people's phones. And that just means we can increase access in a way we've never been able to before.
And that's letting you into another nascent space, because you're getting into the virtual production kind of piece there as well, where you get into a different set of technologies, which is interesting in itself. Levi was asking if you had any unintended outcomes, unexpected outcomes from it, because obviously the beauty of these technologies is you don't know what's going to happen once you get into them, so if you had any kind of unexpected outcomes in developing it.
Well, actually, that's the recording of the Song to the Moon was a slight unexpected. We signed up to the Future Creatives program to experiment. We wanted to find out what we could do with the cameras that we could acquire and the software. But we had no idea at that point what point we'd be able to get to from that. And really, being able to get to that point was down to those people that I thanked during the presentation, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to get to that point. But it became, as we moved through beta testing, and even when we set up at the bowling club, I didn't know where that might go, but it became apparent that we could get to that point. And so bringing in a singer and a pianist was that logical next step for how do we take that to to the next closest point to AR. And then once we had the opportunity at the Beyond conference, again, we didn't know that was going to happen, but we managed to get the asset to the point. And really, the showcase began on the Wednesday. We only cracked the technology on the Monday before to actually implement the AR Opera. And that moment where the iPad screen opened up with the camera, with the asset on it, was a kind of eureka moment for us, because that was the first time where we saw AR Opera actually happen. And we're working at the edge, but it's really exciting when it all comes together like that.
Vishal's asking again how to get involved in the test flight thing, but as I say, I think Levi's put a link up that'll hopefully take people to there in the chat column if people want to look at it. I'm not sure whether this is a ridiculous question or not, but why AR? Why AR and not VR, for example? What was the decision to go with AR? Which, incidentally, I think is correct, but I'm just wondering if it was a conscious decision.
It was a very conscious decision, and that goes to Deepa's point about compatibility of and democratization of compatible devices. Our function as a company is to increase access to Opera, and at the moment there is far more access to mobile devices which are compatible with AR than there is to VR devices. That's not to say that we don't want to explore VR in the future and find exciting and interesting ways of bringing our volumetric recordings into VR and even making pieces specifically for that in the future. But our primary goal is to reach as many people as possible. And for us, the immersive technology tool that we see can attain that is AR. It also, I suppose, goes to that what Walter Benjamin was saying about the integral whole of the performance, whereby you're not being guided by a cameraman. You have the freedom to roam and explore and experience that that Opera in any way in which you want, both visually and audially, because we want to explore spatial audio. Obviously, being Opera, the audio element is crucial to us and was a motivation to trying to bring volumetric production in-house, which meant that we could use more resources on the audio side as well as the video. And so it's really about being able to access as many people as possible, and AR for us is that way.
Really interesting question popped up about leadership. And you'll have to answer this without any embarrassment, given that I'm assuming you're the leader. But when you bring the group of people together to collaborate, how do you get them all to have the same vision and get them all pointing in the same direction? Because you're dealing with people who have different backgrounds, you're dealing with technicists, you're dealing with artists, you're dealing with performers. In a leadership space, in that collaboration, how do you get them facing the same way into that future?
That's been an interesting learning experience. I am a theatre director, and I've worked on productions before for live theatre. Volumetric capture is much closer to film, which is an area that I've not worked in before. And so learning about treatments and how to communicate your vision for effects and the various kind of storyboarding aspects, that's all been an entirely new and entire learning curve for me. But that's been really useful, because actually a lot of those skills are directly transferable into AR, where essentially you are making a film production, but it's for immersive technology. So that's been a big part of it. And the other thing is not just grabbing everyone by the neck and pulling them forward, actually working collaboratively with everyone. People like Brian Irvine, who's been doing this for a lot longer than I have. He has and not just as an opera composer, but also as someone who is an immersive technician and has that breadth of knowledge. Why not use that? Why not lean into those conversations and those ideas to create something which is better than if I just laid down what I wanted to do? So I think that's a cornerstone of how to lead on these projects as well. And just to remain curious and remain open to people's ideas, no matter where those ideas come from. I think that's my approach, and that seems to be getting us to an interesting place so far.
I mean, the reason why that question interests me is, and this is a worry I have about virtual production, the director goes in there and sometimes cedes authority to the technicians and to the technical experts, because the director doesn't necessarily understand the technical piece. So you end up with a piece which is directed by the technical aspect of it, rather than necessarily the aesthetic and performative part of it. How did you avoid that? Or I'm assuming that your entrance into this space has only been over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, you wouldn't have seen yourself as doing this necessarily.
Not at all. But things like the Future Creatives program, that enabled me to learn how to use Unity. I'll never use Unity to the level that someone like Robbie can use Unity, but I can have those conversations, and I can understand the depth kit plugins and what needs to be brought in and how to create those. And that's really valuable, to be able to learn that language so you can have those conversations. It may not be essential, but I found it very useful to be able to talk in that technical way. And once you can do that, and once you find the right partners to work with, and you can provide them with a vision and what you want to create, then it's about partnership, and then it's about working collaboratively. But certainly getting used to things like Unity and getting a foot into that technical realm has really helped.
Catherine Johns is on from Southpaw, and she's really excited about what she's been hearing, because they're on the same journey apparently. And you might want to link up with her afterwards, because she's saying she'd love to kind of have a conversation with you and maybe end up working with you to some extent.
I'm aware of Southpaw, and I have their app on my phone, and so I will be getting in touch.
Good. Just one last question, because people are beginning to have to leave us for other meetings and so on. Given what you've been through for 2 years, and this is a really important question, because I'm thinking about new roles which emerge out of this. How would you describe yourself now? You said you were an opera director. How would you describe yourself now?
Well, I run Ulster Touring Opera, and that is a huge privilege. And being the artistic director of that company is something that I've worked towards, and something that over the last 2 years it's been a pleasure and also at times a challenge to get to the point where this spring we'll be able to share both our live work and our digital work, and that's an exciting place for us. I think everyone's roles have shifted over the last 2 years. People wouldn't have expected to be able to have to present and produce on Zoom and have to create work in immersive technology to reach people purely because they can't get hold of them live. I've heard this a phrase, immersive producer. I don't know what those are, but all I know is that our motivation is to share access to opera, and really that's what's pulling us forward. And whatever may be kind of attached to that is interesting, but the most interesting thing is what you're creating and how you can create more and better and more engaging. And it's as engaging as the opera workshop that I ran, for 8 to 12-year-olds last Saturday in Oma. They're on the same spectrum. All of that work is the same work, but it just has a different output.
Well, because I'm going to take the liberty of calling you an artistic and immersive director in the space. Really want to thank you for the presentation today and for fielding the questions in such an honest way, and to thank you for giving Future Screens the privilege of working with you. It's been a real privilege for us to be able to see what you've produced with that little bit of support that we are able to give, and that's fabulous for us. Can I just say that we'll be back on February the 22nd, 12 o'clock again, and we will have with us Deepa Clare, who is the CEO of Neon, and Aura Digital, and they'll be looking at work that Deepa has been doing around an app in conjunction with people in Japan. So if you'd like to be here, we'd love to see you. Dafydd, thank you very much again. And it's coming in on the sidebar. Everyone was delighted to be here. And thank you for sharing your story in such an honest way. And thank you to everybody. Looks like we might be in a slightly different place the next time we meet. So let's hope that's the case. And thank you again for everyone for giving your time to be with us. Bye all and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. See you soon.